Luna here, and today we're here to find out, can you beat Oblivion Remastered with only scrolls? This run has been requested a few times, and I've barely used scrolls in any Elder Scrolls games, ironically, so I'm curious about it as well. The rules are simple. We can only use scrolls for damage, buffs, debuffs, and in-combat healing. I'm also disallowing sneaking, armor, enchantments, and other consumables like potions. Passive, Birthsign, or racial effects are fine though, and we can make potions to sell to fund our scroll library. No cheats or gameplay mods. Official DLC is allowed. Before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to thank our channel members for helping make this all possible. In the You Broke the Tip Jar tier, we have Ginger Knight and Forgotten God. In the bigger tip jar tier, we have K Plays Music and Games and Blackwood. And in the tip jar tier, we have Jack1165, Ace of Kestrels, Ragnarok, Science Rocks, Tox, and Bwezu. Thank you all for your support. It encourages me to make more of these runs. We pick Breton because 50% magic resistance is too good to pass up, especially when powers and attributes don't affect us much. Even skills aren't that important, as magic skills don't affect scrolls. As such, we pick Alchemy, Acrobatics, Athletics, and Mercantile, as they're the only skills that'll help at least a little by allowing us to generate gold, jump further, and run faster, and Blade, Light Armor, and Marksman, since we must pick 7 skills and they felt fitting for some reason. We specialize in Stealth to raise Mercantile faster and favor Endurance and Speed for extra health, and when all else fails, a hastier retreat. As for our Birthsign, we pick the Lord for innate armor and 15% more magic resistance, bringing us to 65% total. We don't have many scrolls in the tutorial, but we don't have to fight anything to get through it, so we play a pacifist up to that point, by which I mean we ran screaming through the tunnels and hid behind the blades. Once we're out, we make a beeline to the Mystic Emporium, and I'm only half joking when I say they're why I decided to do this in the remaster. In classic Oblivion, having the Mage's Tower and Battlehorn Castle prevents Calendil from unlocking the Mystic Emporium, causing it to be permanently locked after it's closed for the first time. Thus, we'd need an open scroll every single time we wanted to shop there, unless I uninstalled those DLCs. And considering it's the only shop in Cyrodiil with lots of scrolls, that would have gotten old fast. While other vendors may carry a few scrolls, it's faster to simply wait for the Mystic Emporium to restock. I was surprised no one in the Mages Guild sells scrolls, and neither do bookstores. The first edition has the scroll of Puerile Banter, but that's it. So, other than the ones we buy at the Mystic Emporium, our only sources of scrolls are chests, particularly boss chests in Conjurer and Necromancer dungeons, and enemy mages. In fact, those are our only sources of scrolls beyond apprentice level, as even at high levels, the Mystic Emporium only offers beginner scrolls. I mean, there was already little reason to level up, but that cinches it. We're staying at level 2. Honestly, the available effects are limited beyond Fire Frost shock damage and a handful of conjured creatures. Even at high levels, not every pre-made spell can be found as a scroll. And something that particularly worries me is the Restore Health scrolls are on touch or on target, so we won't have any way to heal in combat other than the little bit of passive healing that the remaster just does. After spending a couple in-game weeks stocking up on scrolls, we take the Amulet of Kings to Joffrey and head to Kvatch to rescue Martin. This isn't Can You Beat Oblivion Remastered as a pacifist, so we'll try to fight at least a few foes in each area. However, if there are allies around, we'll let them handle things. During our first fight with a stunted scamp inside the Oblivion Gate, I discovered an annoying quirk of using scrolls. I assumed if we equipped a stack of scrolls, we'd keep using them until we ran out, but that's not the case. Once we use a scroll, we'll automatically equip the Cure Minor Wounds spell, even if we have copies of the scroll left. I had to load back 2 or 3 times while we cleared this gate because we accidentally cast Heal Minor Wounds after using a scroll I knew we had more of. We were low on damaging scrolls by the time we reached the top of the tower, so we used a Frenzy scroll on a Dremora with limited success. I've always found Frenzy to be unreliable. For one, there needs to be multiple enemies, and even when there are other enemies around, there's no guarantee the one we Frenzy will change targets. In this case, the one we frenzied turned on his own summoned scamp and took a little damage, but once the scamp disappeared, he turned back to us even though there was another Dremora right next to him. Frankly, I usually run past the enemies in the final room of Sigil Towers anyway, so I said screw it and grabbed the Sigil Stone. But it's discouraging clearing out one gate nearly wiped out our scrolls. It'll take a while to restock. Even though the Mystic Emporium stocks quite a few scrolls each time, the scroll list is cluttered with dubious effects like Absorb Attribute, Absorb Skill, Calm, and so on. So many scrolls in each batch aren't useful to us. What we want most are damaging effects, but summons and bound weapons also work. As far as I'm concerned, if the weapon or creature originated from a scroll, it's allowed. However, summons are stuck with the short durations of their pre-made spell counterparts, so they aren't as good as you might think. Scamps in particular tend to accomplish almost nothing because they despawn before they're done casting their pitiful fire spell. Normally, I'd create a custom summon scamp spell with a longer duration so it'd stick around long enough to use its far stronger melee attacks, but that obviously isn't an option here. Even for the summons with longer durations, there's a solid chance they'll spend their time blocking or stuck on a piece of furniture. What's a minor annoyance when we can simply summon them again hits different when our last scroll effectively accomplishes nothing in battle. Joffrey and Martin handle the Mythic Dawn agents attacking Wayne and Priory, and we fast travel to Cloudruler Temple. Now it's time to get the Culty books, which thankfully is mostly dialogue. Boris can deal with what little combat there is on the way to the meeting with the sponsor, at least at this level, but we have to help against Raven Cameron, which uses up the few scrolls we had left, so we have to spend the next month stocking up on scrolls before we can launch the raid on the Mythic Dawn Shrine. I'm not promising we'll hunt down all the acolytes, but I wanted enough scrolls to take down Bruma and thin the cult's ranks a little. We take down the doorman with a bound dagger and throw a summoned skeleton and another bound dagger at Harrow and the cultists in the first room. After that, we torch Bruma to a crisp with 2 burning touches and use another skeleton, bound dagger, and a couple other destruction scrolls on the remaining cultists in the chamber. We ran past all the cultists on the way out. I shudder to think how many scrolls we'd have needed for them. We used 2 scrolls for each spy, and then Bill helped buy more scrolls from the Mystic Emporium while I worked on the script, because the next steps of the main quest will need a mountain of scrolls, even if we skip enemies. It's time to fetch a Daedric Artifact for Martin, and in a combat-averse run like this, I'd normally do Sheogorath's quest as it requires no fighting, but there's a problem. The display case with the smelly cheese we need to lure rats into Border Watch is locked with a very hard lock. While an open scroll for very hard locks does exist, it's a level 21 scroll. That definitely falls outside the novice and apprentice level the Mystic Emporium sells, and I very much doubt we have even a snowball's chance in Hiffle of finding one out in the wild at level 2. Even if we leveled up, I don't relish the idea of trying to find one as random loot, not to mention we'd need so many more scrolls per enemy for the rest of the run because enemies have far more health at level 21 than they do at level 2. That leaves Azura's quest, which requires us to slay 5 vampires. Hooray! I hope Bill found some Burning Touch and Flare scrolls because we're gonna need them. 3 of the vampires can be taken down with a couple of Flare or Burning Touch scrolls apiece, and we got one with a bound dagger that was, of course, from a scroll. However, the orc vampires are another story. The first one has a 2-handed weapon that can cut us in half in 2 hits, and we use almost all our considerable stock of Flare scrolls on her, as well as enlisting the aid of the Daedra coming from the nearby Oblivion Gate. Of course, they turn on us afterwards, and it seems like more enemies can follow us through doors in the remaster than in the original, as they follow us into the cave. We tried leading them to the remaining vampires, but of course they didn't want to fight each other. We ran outside to avoid tripping over roots in the cave and used our remaining Flare scrolls, several Shock scrolls, and most of our Burning Touch scrolls on the vampire, not to mention a few Summon Scamp and Skeleton scrolls. Thankfully, this one, while very tough, only had a 1-handed weapon and didn't hit nearly as hard. Don't get me wrong, we would have lost if we stayed in its reach long, but we could survive a hit or 2, and this allowed us to use the touch spell scrolls more easily than against the first orc vampire we faced. When we return to Martin, we're told about the Armor of Tiber Septum and that Captain Burd is waiting for us down by an Oblivion Gate that's open outside of Bruma. The Oblivion Gate seems more urgent, although I'm not sure why guards keep sending a librarian into hell portals. Seriously, anyone with any amount of combat training should be able to do this better than us. But apparently Burd needs someone to tell him what a sigil stone looks like, so we tag along. Things go well while the two guards with us are still up, but get a bit trickier once they're gone. Burd can still handle most of the Daedra, but one of the Dremora gets the better of him and we have to jump in with a few scrolls. Thankfully, those are the only ones we have to use before reaching the sigil stone, as the vampires already made a larger dent in our library than I'd like, and we have Sancre and Miscarcand ahead of us. Sancre is up first, and to be honest, I rarely fight the ghosts because they are incredibly easy to run past. I don't see the point in forcing our librarian to fight enemies I rarely deal with in other runs, so we run past the ghosts and take on the undead blades. They consume the burning touch scrolls we have left, as well as several shocking touch and shock scrolls. At this point, most of our remaining scrolls are summons, which would likely go for the haunt of ghosts trailing along behind us instead of the undead blades, or frost-based, and since skeletons resist frost, I'd rather not waste them on the undead blades. We managed to take all of them down before we run out of more effective magic, but only just. And we have to use our last bound dagger scroll against a couple of ghosts that followed us all the way into the chamber with the armor while we waited for the blades to dispel the barrier. Now we have Miscarcand to deal with. Thankfully, most of the goblins and undead are happy to fight each other, but not all of them. We can use our cold touch spell and snowball scrolls on the goblins, and we outrun most of the zombies and skeletons. However, we have no choice but to fight the Lich King, as we need the key he's carrying in order to leave. We've found open easy lock scrolls, but the lock blocking our way is a hard one. Unfortunately, the Lich reflects many of the spell scrolls we attempt to use on him, and we're out of bound weapon scrolls, so we have no choice but to hope our summons focus on the correct target. The first scamp we summon immediately gets distracted by zombies, which isn't a good start, but the second one not only targets the Lich, it runs in to use its melee attacks and takes it down in seconds. Not gonna lie, getting a summon whose brain worked was very lucky. We're only an observer in the battle for Bruma, and we almost always sprint through the Great Gate anyway, so it was a rare occasion where we didn't have to use a single scroll. Or at least it would have been, except the door to the top of the tower is locked with an average lock we don't have a scroll for. We had to take out the sigil keeper to get the key, but thankfully he was next to the door and we were able to take him down with cold touch scrolls, although it took more than it should have because he healed himself twice. Of course, we found an open average lock scroll during our next shopping trip, and it wasn't all we found. The Mystic Emporium also had more powerful destruction scrolls like Hailstone, and stronger summons like Clanfears, Headless Zombies, and even Daedroths for sale. Most of these are not apprentice spells and are far better than I was expecting to find for sale, especially at level 2. Maybe the changes to Mercantile in the remaster are the cause? We just got the Journeyman Mercantile perk, and in addition to allowing us to buy and sell any type of item with any merchant, like in the original, the perk description says, merchants may offer even better items. I looked at the scrolls and mercantile pages of the UESP wiki, but they didn't say anything about this, so I'm just guessing that in the remaster the mercantile perks unlock more powerful scrolls than we'd otherwise be able to buy. Which means we have Daedroths! Frankly, it makes up for having to deal with the remaster's UI, which is somehow worse than the originals. Bethesda, you had so many mods you could have ripped off, and somehow you still failed at UI design. Anyway, I'm sure these new scrolls will come in handy in Paradise. We only have 3 Daedroths, and I'd like to save them for Mankar Cameron, but we also have Clanfears, Headless Zombies, and a lot of destruction scrolls and lesser summons like skeletons. We burned through tons of the destruction scrolls on the Clanfear runs between us and Mankar, and the Dremora with the Bands of the Chosen put up a fight for once. He managed to take us out on the first attempt because our summon decided to run off to fight a random Clanfear runt, so on the second try we made sure there were no other enemies nearby before we started the fight. I still don't know how the Dremora did so much damage so quickly the first time, as we didn't take much damage when he hit us on the second attempt, but oh well, we won. And our Headless Zombie is doing his best Ghost Rider impression. The Bands of the Chosen are light armor, but we must wear them to progress. If you want to say the run failed here, go ahead, but we'll see this through to the end. Once again, Orth and the other Dremora with him rushed forward, killed Eldamil before we spoke to him, and attacked us, which was a rough fight. We had to call on all the headless zombies we had left, plus several destruction scrolls. We didn't bother with bound weapons because I figured the Dremora would block, or at the very least were tough enough to mitigate the damage our pitiful skill and strength inflict. Also, bound weapons only last 15 seconds apiece, so if they block a couple times, we've effectively accomplished nothing. The bound dagger scrolls serve well enough against the robed cultists, though. We don't bother wasting scrolls on Raven and Bruma, and instead stab Mankar in the face with a bound dagger after summoning our Daedroth. The fight goes exceptionally well, as our Daedroth targeted Mankar right away. Unfortunately, our dagger ran out of time and we accidentally threw a punch, which amazingly ended Mankar but also broke the rules, so we had to load back. Thankfully, the second round goes mostly the same as the first, and level 2 Mankar is no match for a Daedroth. Now we just have to get Martin to the Temple of the One. We still have 2 Daedroth scrolls, so we use them in the Imperial Palace and in the streets of the Temple District as a distraction, which makes running to the Temple of the One a remarkably straightforward process. With that, Martin banishes Mehrunes Dagon and proves that, yes, you can beat Oblivion Remastered with only scrolls. I had no idea the remaster might make it possible for us to get stronger scrolls when I chose to do this run in it instead of the original. It really was because of the Mystic Emporium bug. To be honest, I regretted my choice for a while because the remastered UI made finding the right scrolls in battle a bit of a pain. In the original, the UI remembers where it was when you last opened it, so we could have selected the same scroll over and over again more easily than we could in the remaster, where we had to find it every time because it resets to the top of the list. But it was worth dealing with that if it was why we got Daedroths. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that run. If you did, then please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps the channel. Channel memberships are also a thing if you want to support the channel even more, get your name in the opening credits of challenge runs, and get access to new runs as soon as they're uploaded. Usually a few hours or days before they're made public, although this one is probably going to go up a little over a week early. I admit that's a rarity, though. I don't usually get stuff out that far ahead of schedule. And if you know anyone who might like my rambly challenge runs or let's plays, I'd really appreciate it if you shared this with them. I'm kind of terrible at the whole social media thing, so I can use all the help I can get. That being said, I have a Blue Sky that's linked in the description of all my videos, and I post there when I put runs out, so if you want to stay up to date on these runs and you're worried about YouTube's notifications flaking out, that's where to go. More run ideas are always welcome as well, for Oblivion and other games, so leave them in the comments. If you're not sure what runs I've already done, I have a playlist with all of them that should be popping up right about now. But regardless of all that, thank you for watching to the very end of the video, and I'll see you next time to find out, can you beat Grim Dawn with only pets?